Chapter 1, Machine Gunner at the Ukraine Front, September 1943. I was born in September 1924. Our home was in a small village on the Austrian side of the Bavarian Alps near Salzburg. On leaving school, I was apprenticed to my father, a master carpenter who ran a small workshop with a couple of employees. Notices of eligibility for conscription into the German Wehrmacht were distributed to our village in the autumn of 1942. It was a red-letter day for everybody. We 12 heroes turned out in our Sunday best. The fire brigade band played a rousing serenade. The Burgermeister delivered a stirring speech mentioning the fatherland and its struggle against world Bolshevism. Afterwards, girls of the Bund Deutscher Mädchen, or BDM, the Girls' Hitler Youth, gave each of us a large posy to be worn in the hatband of our Tyrolean headgear, or if we were hatless, draped over the lapel and left shoulder of our jackets. Then we sat for a group photograph. None of us gave a thought to the possibility of our young lives being cut short in battle. When the war ended, only 6 of our group were still alive. I was able to complete my joinery apprenticeship before my formal conscription into Gebirgsjäger Regiment 144, GJR 144, of 3rd Gebirgs Division, 3rd GD, in February 1943. The division recruited principally from the Bavarian Alps region. At Kufstein, I passed a sham medical to be declared Kriegsverwendungsfähig, fit for the front, and after the usual entry formalities, received my uniform issue and reported 10 days later to the infantry depot at Mittenwald, west of Berchtesgaden. When I completed training 6 months later, I was a qualified SMG gunner. Never once throughout the basic course did I ever hear the term sniper as a tactical component in infantry warfare as waged either by ourselves or the Soviets, although mention was made of male and female Russian sharpshooters who tended to fire upon us from positions rearward of the front line and who were the primary target for machine gunners. The training was hard, and the discipline, though lacking the chicanery which had characterized it pre-war, allowed no time for innocent loafing. The new recruit had to be brought to the peak of physical fitness and weapons handling. Instructors with front experience were at pains to pass on their practical knowledge. They knew the risks for the newcomer to the front. At the beginning of September 1943, I received my marching orders to join GJR 144 in the southern sector of the Eastern Front, near Voroshilovsk, a town in the Ukraine a few hundred kilometers north of the eastern end of the Sea of Azov. For the majority, there was a last opportunity to take leave of their families with a 3-day leave pass. My mother stroked her hand tenderly over my head. My father, a soldier in the Great War, hid his concern behind a stiff upper lip and great industry in his carpentry workshop. When I was about to board the bus for Mittenwald barracks, my mother burst into tears and my father hugged me, something he had never done before. Clearly restraining his emotions, he whispered,
"Take care, my boy. I wish from the bottom of my heart that you come home safely, but everything lies in God's hands."
As the bus drove away from the village, I waved back once and then stared ahead. Otherwise, for sure, I would have cried myself. Within days, we were trundling across the endless Russian steppe for the Donets Basin. Each cattle truck had a deep litter of straw and was part of a long train pulled by 2 locomotives and protected against enemy aircraft and partisans by 20mm flak quadruples in cupolas on 2 freight chassis. It was July in Russia and baking hot. The loss of 250,000 men with all their armament and equipment at Stalingrad at the beginning of 1943 had marked the turn of the tide for the Wehrmacht. On 2 consecutive evenings, 18 and 19 December 1942, Feldmarschall von Manstein had requested that Hitler allow the 6th Army to break out of the encirclement at Stalingrad, this being the only way to save the mass of the men. In this, he had the vociferous support of Seitzler, chief of the General Staff, but Hitler turned down the suggestion. To retreat a step, anywhere, was against his military philosophy. The last hope was now Feldmarschall Paulus, as the diary entry of Hitler's army adjutant, Major Gerhard Engel, for 22nd December 1942, makes clear.
FHQ Werewolf. Deepest depression here. Nearly everybody hoping that P would take the risk and attempt to break out contrary to his orders. He would at least save the men, if at enormous loss in materials. Yodel spoke very seriously this evening, and one could see that he was banking on this independent decision.
But Paulus was no Manstein, nor even a Yodel, and the Sixth Army stayed at Stalingrad to rot. During the winter of 1942-43, GJR 144 of 3GD fought south of Stalingrad and narrowly escaped becoming involved in the encirclement. After murderous winter fighting at Milorov and breaking out to join the new front at Voroshilovsk, the regiment had been reduced to a quarter of its authorized strength. The regiment dug in and was reconstituted with men and equipment over the next 6 months. During this rest, it was fortunate to be confronted by little more than nuisance raids, from which the odd skirmish resulted, the occasional artillery barrage and Russian sniper fire. The latter claimed its victims, particularly among new arrivals and the inexperienced. Most of the time, the Germans were helpless against the sniper phenomenon due to the shortage of heavy weapons. It was a relatively rare occurrence that a sniper was located and engaged with medium infantry weapons such as mortars, MGs, or the rare PaK anti-tank gun. The German side suffered from a total lack of snipers. I belonged to a group making up the last personnel replacements, bringing GJR 144 to full strength. For 3 weeks, 3GD had been watching with alarm as the Red Army, strengthened by supplies of new American weapons, was equipping for a new offensive in the Donets Basin and the Ukraine, and so every new recruit arriving at Voroshilovsk was extremely welcome. Upon our arrival, we had the fortune to experience our baptism of fire immediately. Without having an opportunity to acclimatize, we were pitched into the extremely bitter and bloody fighting in the Red Kina Gap a day after arriving. We had been dealt a bum hand from the bottom of the pack, and for the remainder of the war, 3rd General Division was used purely as infantry, always present at the hotspots of the fighting in the southern section of the Eastern Front. Our losses were enormous, and in the final reckoning, exceeded by several times the authorized personnel strength. The Donets Basin, with its extensive coal mines, was an important supplier of raw material. This ensured it was a focus of great interest to the opposing belligerents. The mines with their huge gallery systems had not been investigated and mopped up during the German advance. Whole Soviet battle groups lurked underground, allowing Wehrmacht units to pass overhead. Wherever they were in a position to do so, these Russian forces would appear suddenly, as if from nowhere, to attack the German line from behind. Such encounters developed into fearsome hand-to-hand engagements, which often spilt back down into the galleries. With great energy, the Soviets had already breached the German line and were now attempting to widen the bridgehead. The 3rd GD commander considered the situation to be so dangerous that he launched an immediate counterattack without prior preparation or the regrouping of his forces. This succeeded, but amounted to a Pyrrhic victory. At first light on the 18th of July 1943, we Jaeger moved stealthily towards our forward trenches, tension and nervousness etched into hard facial features. Each man had his own method of overcoming his anxiety before each fresh engagement, chewing on a lump of black bread, smoking, urinating, or evacuating frequently, while most of the new arrivals seemed to have a motor disorder and jerked from place to place. I watched it all with acute discomfort. My own condition was not good. My stomach rebelled at the thought of food, and my limbs felt like jelly. In such a critical situation, I realized what a godsend it was to have a veteran platoon commander, long since baptized with the waters of the front. Noticing my fear, he spoke to me in soothing tones. "Just keep taking deep breaths, Junger. Keep your mind on your MG and shoot just like you have been trained. Watch for my signals. I look after my boys, and I will be there with you in the thick of it. So far, I have brought my platoon out of every she-mozzle, and I haven't lost a man yet." His words, the truth of the latter sentence highly dubious, gave me strength to overcome my anxieties and stand firm in the face of whatever horrors my baptism of fire were to bring